I wonder if we should get started, Rebecca.
Sounds good. It is 6:04 and we will go ahead and get started. I think they're still letting some folks into the room, but good evening, everyone. Thank you for sharing your time with us this evening for the Gilroy Station Visioning Project. My name is Rebecca Garcia. I'm also a resident of Gilroy, born and raised. I was asked by VTA to facilitate today's discussion, and I'm really happy to be here with you to begin this dialogue. This is a great opportunity for us to be engaged, to provide our feedback, and really also to listen to what is being considered for proposal. So what can you expect this evening? For about 35 minutes tonight, you're going to hear from various presenters. Once we're done with presentations, you'll have 40 minutes in a smaller group. We call these breakout rooms, where you'll have more time to share your thoughts and ask questions. We'll also be holding a meeting in Spanish led by our very own resident, Jorge Mendoza, next week on the 24th. We have our teammate, Ricky Pozos, who is with us tonight and would like to say a few words in Spanish.
Hola, muchas gracias. Bienvenidos a todos. Quería hacer un mensaje rápido, breve. Si alguien necesita traducción en español o tiene unas preguntas en español, por favor, mándenme un chat y les ayudaremos. Y si quieren estar en un grupo pequeño en español, también mándenme un chat y estamos aquí para ayudarlos. Gracias. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you, Ricky. Okay, great. So why are we here tonight? VTA is considering a new transit-oriented development. You will hear us call this TOD, transit-oriented development at the Gilroy Transit Center. VTA owns the parking lot on Monterey between 7th and 9th Street at the edge of downtown Gilroy. The site
Rebecca,
is...
sorry to interrupt, but I should put the slides on. Is that right?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me share my screen and I will go ahead and make sure our slideshow.
Number 2.
There we are. Please proceed.
Okay, so this site is an important transit hub and a future high-speed rail station. VTA has asked us here this evening to help develop a vision for the 8 acres. The goal is to work with the community and create a plan that brings retail, workforce housing that is affordable, and other benefits as well. The hope is to move forward in the first phase with a workforce housing project in partnership with the County of Santa Clara. So this is just the first phase with the workforce housing project, 8 acres to Vision 4 here. My role tonight is to really help facilitate the dialogue as a community member and to share with you how the community engagement process will be conducted for the land that we're about to discuss this evening. I want to reiterate that this is the first of several opportunities to come. So when we're done here tonight, if you feel like you have more questions or more comments or thoughts come to you next week, not to worry, you're going to have more opportunities. And we will go over those.
I'm going to stop you again. The slides are not showing, at least on my end.
Oh, okay, Ricky.
I'm hearing from other people as well in the chat that they're not seeing the slides.
Okay, let me try this again. Is it possible to see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so let me
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you, Ricky.
Okay, so what slide are we on, Rebecca?
We are on 3. We are on 3. Okay, great. So before we begin, we just want to start with some online etiquette. I know many of you have participated in online Zoom meetings, but just a friendly reminder, please treat everyone here with respect. If you have any questions about the presentation, Zoom has a chat function and we'll be having a Q&A to address some questions. Plus, you will have a 40-minute breakout room to ask your questions as well. Please mute your audio if you're not speaking. VTA will not tolerate any demeaning or harassing speech or behavior, so let's be kind and let's make this a safe space for discussion. This event is also being recorded by VTA and live on YouTube. Okay, slide 4, tonight's agenda. What are we doing? We're going to do some introductions, talk briefly about VTA, conduct a quick poll and ask you a few questions. We'll introduce ourselves in the chat in just a minute, and we'll also listen to a presentation about the specific site. Then we'll take a couple of questions and do a brief Q&A all together as a large group. After that, we're headed into the breakout session where you'll be in a smaller room, a more intimate setting. There's nothing you need to do to make that happen. We'll actually be making that happen behind the scenes. One thing to keep in mind is once you get into the breakout room, that's your 40 minutes. So that's really your time. So we're kind of in a hurry to get to that time. That is really your time to give comments and feedback and questions. So I promise you, we will get to you. We'll reconvene after the breakouts as a large group together again and report back. So just keep that in mind when you're in your small group. We'll be asking for the top 2 or 3 things to share with a larger group when you're done. Okay, so who invited us here this evening? The Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, also known to many of us as VTA, our primary public transit provider responsible for congestion management, specific highway improvement projects, countywide transportation planning. They also have their own board of directors made up of 12 city and county elected office holders. But when I think of VTA, I think of the bus, light rail, paratransit service. However, next slide, they're actually much more than that. VTA is also a funding partner and they owned land, which really brings us to why we're here this evening. Knowing that VTA owns land where they want to develop a TOD, transit-oriented development, that supports transit ridership, facilitates private investment downtown Gilroy, and they generate revenue for transit operations. It's important that as they develop, that they work very closely with the community that they're going to be developing in. So before VTA launches into any development process, their first step is to go out into the community, which is exactly what we're doing tonight, and understand what it is that you care about and begin to initiate that dialogue. At the same time, this is also VTA's opportunity to give our community and our neighborhood an understanding of what VTA is interested in pursuing in partnership with the county. So I'm just going to slow down for just a second, and in a minute we'll do introductions for all of us. But before we do that, acknowledging that we're going through a unique time in history right now, and knowing that Gilroy is a very special place and there's a lot of history here, I'd like us to take a moment to reflect on the history of this land. I have the honor of introducing a very special woman who will start us off with an acknowledgement of the 8 acres of land that we're about to discuss. A big welcome to Canyon Coyote woman, who is a Mutsun Oholoni from our South Bay region. She's a native and the daughter of tribal chairwoman Anne Marie Sayers of Indian Canyon Nation, who lives on the only federally recognized Indian country between Sonoma and Santa Barbara. Canyon, thank you for getting us started. Hopefully Canyon is unmuted.
Mishmintuhis, Connercott Canyon, Coyote Woman, Sayers Roots. As a small introduction, it's so very important that we acknowledge the land that we are on. Land acknowledgements is one form of Indigenous protocol. And I, as a California Indigenous activist, artist, and educator, I want to offer my voice that through Indigenous protocol, we acknowledge and honor the histories of these spaces and places that we occupy in today's post-colonial world. I want to offer a song. My mother and my grandmother believe that when song, ceremony, and dancing stops, so does the earth. I too believe that, and it is through culture sharing that we may all honor truth and history, and that we can all be good ancestors in training. Because when it comes to honoring our Indigenous peoples of these lands, I say nothing about us without us. This is the grandmother song to honor our grandmothers and all of our grandmothers, to honor our earth, because we are here together. Moi moi o kawana, moi moi o ka, moi moi no, moi moi o ko, moi moi o ne, ayo konale, moi moi o hey, ayo konale, moi moi o kawana, moi moi o ko, moi moi no, moi moi o ko, moi moi o ne, ayo konale, moi moi ayo konale, moi moi o kawan, oh moi moi o ko, moi moi no, moi moi o ko, moi moi o ne, ayo konale, moi moi ayo konale. Oh, remember the Indigenous peoples of whose land you are on. You are in Mutsun Ohlone territory, and I encourage you to invite the Indigenous peoples to participate and offer consultation going forward to help our community know about truth and history. Thank you, and I appreciate the work you're doing.
Canyon, thank you so very much. Okay, so why is community engagement important? What is it? Well, we're starting it tonight. It's a process that seeks your input to ensure that decision-making is well-informed. It means having a meaningful conversation, a two-way dialogue that is representative of the community. It's an opportunity to propose ideas and come up with collective solutions. Our very first job in this work is to offer an inclusive, safe space for everybody to share their opinions and thoughts, as diverse as they may be. And it's an ongoing conversation, right? So it allows our community to help define and shape our city's future. Again, this is the first of several opportunities to come. Some quick online tips here for you. If you're on a computer, you will notice a chat box at the bottom of the screen. This is one way for us to interact with you. I'm sure you're all familiar with chat now. If you're on a tablet or a phone, it looks a little bit different. You'll want to click more and then chat. Our Spanish-speaking teammate Ricky would like to jump in and say a few words in Spanish.
Oops.
Hola, buenas noches otra vez, aquí Ricky. Si van a necesitar ayuda con el chat o escuchar la junta en español, por favor, nada más manden un mensaje igual a mí y vamos a poder ayudarles en ese aspecto. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ricky. Okay, now I'm going to ask everyone here tonight to please introduce yourself in the chat with your name. Feel free to also identify whatever you're most comfortable with: business owner, resident, advocate, elected official, CBO, nonprofit. It's important we get a good sense of who's in the room so we can make sure we're doing a good job with our outreach efforts. While you're typing in the chat, I will introduce the team. We have with us this evening staff from Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, VTA, PlaceWorks, the consultant, County of Santa Clara Office of Supportive Housing. I refer to them as County OSH. We have City of Gilroy staff that's joined us here tonight. Thank you to the entire team. We really appreciate your participation tonight. And I still do not see the PowerPoint up, Bruce. I'm not sure if other folks can see it. Okay, great. While everyone is typing into the chat, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our elected officials that have joined us this evening, all of whom will be briefly unmuted. So please, elected officials, keep that in mind in case you would like to speak. Our Mayor Marie Blankley would like to share a few words. And give her just a moment as I think they're unmuting folks.
Yes, I think I was just unmuted. Hi, I'm Mayor Marie Blankley. I want to thank everyone who's here to present tonight, everyone who had anything to do with organizing this, and certainly everyone who is taking the time to attend. I hope that we can all be open-minded. Change is hard, but I know as much about this as everyone else is going to hear tonight. I'm hopeful that it will be a development that does a lot for Gilroy in terms of meeting the housing needs that we have yet to meet. What I know is that there are affordable housing categories in Gilroy that are not yet built. And this is one way to address that. And transit-oriented housing, in my opinion, is particularly valuable because it puts people where they can have access to transportation and get to jobs. So with that, I want to say thank you all for being here. Let's listen to what this is. And thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe we also have Rob Rennie here this evening, a VTA board member who also serves on several of VTA's committees and is the Town of Los Gatos Vice Mayor, who would also like to say a few words. Give us a moment while he is also unmuted.
Thank you. I assume you can hear me. As you mentioned, I am a VTA board member. I was VTA board member the last 2 years. I'm actually an alternate board member, but still staying engaged. And I'm listening in tonight because I think transit-oriented developments are extremely important. As Marie just mentioned, you know, since we do need to build housing, it's a good way to build housing that has less of an impact. You know, hopefully more people will be taking a train and there'll be, you know, or buses, and there'll be less traffic impacts. I'm also hopeful that, you know, the more we build around transit, the more viable the transit becomes, and we can increase the number of trains and hopefully electrify the train down to Gilroy also. And I think this would be a step in helping us move towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also we have Council Member Zack Hilton, who's joined us this evening. Please give us a moment while he's unmuted. While we're unmuting him, I would also like to thank the Gilroy City staff, their communications team, their public works staff, and council members of Gilroy, all for sharing the meeting notice throughout the city. We have really great participation tonight, so thank you very much for getting the word out to folks.
There we go, Rebecca. Thank you, VTA, for allowing the community to participate in this process tonight. Projects that are transit-oriented allow people to live and work near public transportation, which helps clear the air, ease traffic, and add infrastructure investment to the community. With the recent adoption of our city's General Plan 2040, we as a community called for bold actions that include providing high-density housing options, affordable housing for all, and continuing to promote cleaner modes of transportation. We encourage existing and proposed development to incorporate transportation demand management measures such as car sharing, transit passes, and unbundling of parking, where such measures will result in a reduction of vehicle miles traveled, reduction of required amount of parking, or an increase in alternative transportation modes. Lastly, we are actively embracing advancing ideas and projects that promote the concept of free-range people here in the city of Gilroy. We advocate for building and planning that considers future generations, as well as current residents who don't own cars. Advancing mobility options reflects what we are teaching our youth in the community through Safe Routes to School, and why we are nationally recognized as a bicycle-friendly community from the League of American Bicyclists, as well as recognized by the World Health Organization as an age-friendly community. Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Hilton. I would also like to acknowledge Councilmember Peter Leroy Munoz, who's joined us, Councilmember Carol Marquez, who's joined us, and Councilmember Rebecca Armendariz, who's joined us as well. I'm hoping I did not miss anybody, but folks will let me know if I did. I believe we also have Amy McElroy from Assemblymember Robert Revis's office with us. Thank you very much. Okay, great. It's your turn. We actually get to hear from you now. Cliff is going to send you a poll. A few questions will pop up on your screen in just a moment, and go ahead and take a minute to answer those questions. This is great. So the question we're asking is, are you a resident? Do you work in Gilroy? Are you a renter? Are you a homeowner, a student? Do you drive to get around? Do you use a bicycle to get around? Do you take transit to get around? And Cliff, can everyone see the results?
Yes, so far 67% voted. Well, I haven't broadcasted the results yet, so it's still going.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Okay, it looks like I think the count has stopped. So I think people who have wanted to submit information have. So I'm going to end it and then share it.
Thank you.
Does everyone see?
I see 58% resident, 36% work in Gilroy, 13% renters, 52% homeowners, 6% students, 68% driving, bicycle 19%, and I take transit to get around 22%. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Okay, if we're done with the poll, I would like to introduce you to Jessie O'Malley Solis with Valley Transportation Authority. Jessie is the manager of the TOD development program, and she's going to share with you a little bit more about that.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jessie O'Malley Solis, as Rebecca mentioned. I am the program manager for TOD at VTA. Equity and inclusion is an important component of our VTA TOD program. The Gilroy community, along with VTA, wants to see that all people in Gilroy are housed, mobile, heard, and thriving. Building homes that our families can afford near transportation allows families to earn a livable wage and spend more time on the things that matter most, like health, family, and our community. This means that building physical connections between housing and access to transportation are very important here at the Gilroy station. Historically, residents of color in Santa Clara County have been excluded from equitable housing opportunities. This means that residents of color have been unjustly treated by the private housing market. Throughout the county, almost half, or 44% of the homeless population identify as Latinx. Compare that to the county's general population, whereas 1/3 or 27% identify as Latinx. In Gilroy, approximately 700 people were homeless in 2019, and that number has undoubtedly increased due to the COVID-19 health and economic crisis. Many more Gilroy residents here are at risk of homelessness every day. Almost 1,600 low-income Gilroy households are paying half or more of their income in rent, and that's a burden that is simply unsustainable. People who pay so much in rent are one paycheck away from homelessness. At VTA, we're working to address these past wrongs of experience based on race and income. VTA's TOD program provides affordable housing and jobs near transit, which can help address these housing barriers and racial segregation in our communities, which will in turn contribute to communities to a higher level of fairness and diversity. We ask for the City of Gilroy and its citizens to help us build an inclusive community. Together, we can co-create a future where all residents have safe access to frequent transit, which connects our homes and our jobs. We ask that you join VTA in our effort to create a community where all people are housed, mobile, thriving, and heard. Next slide, please. VTA has an affordable housing policy that takes aim at addressing equity and inclusion. VTA's affordable housing policy requires a minimum of 20% of all housing built on site to be affordable to households earning 60% of area median income and below. Further, our policy has a higher goal of achieving 35% of our housing build out to be affordable to households earning 60% of area median income and below, portfolio wide. Part of our policy is to form strategic partnerships to achieve these goals. One of the reasons we are here tonight is because the County of Santa Clara's Office of Supportive Housing and VTA has formed a key partnership on this site to help fund our affordable housing. Next slide, please. The Gilroy community has specific housing needs, and with visioning this exercise tonight, we're able to be a part of the solution for community needs. Gilroy's community housing needs cover a spectrum from housing for those who are unhoused, at risk of losing their housing, and working people struggling to pay for housing. As I mentioned previously, 1,600 low-income households in Gilroy pay more than half of their income toward housing. For example, the site we're talking about tonight could help house a family of four earning between $47,000 a year and $126,000 a year. And that rental range for families would be between $1,000 a month and $2,800 a month. And with that, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Bruce Brubaker from PlaceWorks, who will help walk you through the community vision and master plan process.
So I think Bruce might be having some technical issues right now. Let me see if he's back in the meeting. Sorry, 1 minute.
That's okay. Technical difficulties, we've all had them. Well, I will let everybody know once Bruce is done presenting the details on the plan, we'll actually move to the Q&A section of this. We'll have about 10 minutes for the broader large group conversation for Q&A. We'll pull about 5 questions from the chat. But not to worry if your questions don't get answered at that point. Let me admit, Bruce, because you'll have a breakout session and then you'll have an opportunity to ask more questions there as well.
Okay, Bruce has returned and he will start his presentation when he is ready. Thank you everyone for your patience.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I've been having some glitches, but I am ready to talk about the next slide, Cliff. So this is the context of the property that we are looking at for this project, which is 7.8 acres on the west side of the railroad tracks in between Monterey Road and the Caltrain station. And from north to south, it extends from 7th Street down to 9th Street. Currently, it is used mostly for parking, and there's a historic train station. The Gilroy station is there. Next slide. So there's several projects that are being contemplated and underway in this area. The city has done a general plan, which has policy and goals for transit-oriented development. They are also developing a downtown specific plan update for the area. The VTA is working on the project that we have in front of us tonight, which is a visioning project for the site. There will be, after community input is gathered, there will be an RFP released, and the VTA will select a developer to develop the project. Construction is likely to be after 2024 or sometime in 2024. There's also a project for TAMC, which is the Transportation Authority of Monterey County, that is improving tracks to enable connections to Salinas and eventually onto Monterey. And then High Speed Rail is proposing a high speed rail station in Gilroy, as most of you probably know about. And that is not likely to begin construction until 2028 or 2029. Next slide. This image shows some of those plans I have talked about, including the footprint of the high-speed rail station, which is a conceptual footprint. It's undergoing environmental review now. It could potentially change some aspects of it, but some are fixed. So these are the long-term future plans for the area. Next slide. This is the phase 1 housing site that we're contemplating tonight. So this is the south end of the site. It's currently mostly used for parking. And we want to hear your ideas and thoughts about what could happen on that site, and also on the entire site that VTA owns. So we're looking at a conceptual master plan of the whole site, as well as a specific housing development on that phase 1 site. Next slide. The Caltrain platform is shown next to the Gilroy station. The area we're looking at, the total area has 471 spaces. There was a survey done in 2019, this was pre-pandemic, that shows that the spaces were about 63% utilized. So the parking areas were not filled up, but they were used. This drawing also shows access points from Monterey Road and 7th Street into the site. Next slide. Okay, so lots of things happening on the site. There's several bus lines that use the Gilroy station as a transfer point, and so this is a extremely important transit node. Next slide. There's also Bikeway Networks in the area. You can see the Gilroy station with the B on it. But the purple lines show streets that have bike lanes already striped on them. The green lines are where there are bike paths separated from traffic. And the yellow lines are where there are bike routes that would share lanes with cars. So this is the existing and proposed bicycle network in the area. Next slide. So what is transit-oriented development? We're going to show a few slides about what components make up good transit-oriented development. If you could go to the next slide, Cliff. It includes transportation choices. So development near stations are able to have employees or residents or visitors be able to use multiple transportation modes to get around. So walking and bicycling, obviously, driving also, and bus or train. Next slide. Transit-oriented development also has a mix of uses. Oftentimes residential, which is a great use for being close to transit, but also stores, retail shops, hotels occasionally, and workplaces as well. Next slide. And transit-oriented development has activity. So there's lots of activities that take place near transit-oriented development in the transit that serves it, including eating, drinking, but also making and visiting and touring. So there's a lot of activities that can and should happen here. The photo on the lower right is actually an artist studio building that is located near transit in Southern California. Next slide. So we're here to really open this discussion with community members and see what you would like to see in the area. So we have some maybe prompts to get your creative thinking caps on. If you could go to the next slide. There's potential for housing for different needs. So what kind of housing could go here? And we're talking, about the primary site that we're looking at, which is workforce housing, and we'll have housing for different levels. But there's other parts of the site that need to be planned, and should those parts have senior housing or other types of housing, market housing? What types of people or what kinds of needs should be provided for? Next slide. Another opportunity is for gathering spaces. Different gathering spaces are shown here, but they could be active, they could be passive, they could be places to meet neighbors and friends. What kind of activity spaces would you like to see in the area near the Gilroy train station? Next slide. There's opportunities for green space. This is an urbanized site. It will need to have some kind of development on it, but there's still opportunities to provide green space. It could happen in narrow sidewalk areas. It could happen even on buildings as shown here, or there could be small plazas that have some green space as part of them as well. Next slide. And there could be opportunities for public art. Here's some examples from different places, including Gilroy. The image, the great image in the center on top is a photo of a mural that's just next door to the VTA Transit Center. Next slide. And then there could be opportunities to improve transportation. So should there be better bikeways protected bikeways? Should there be better bus stops, shelters? Can sidewalks, the network for pedestrians be improved? So all these things could be considered for improvement. And we do want to hear from you what you think are the priorities. Next slide. So with this, we will open it up. I'm sure there's lots of people that'll have questions. And Rebecca, do you want to go ahead and run this question and answer session? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bruce. Okay, so I've seen a lot of questions in the chat and they're actually being answered, some of them as they come in. So thank you all for being engaged. We're going to go ahead and take 5 questions from the chat, and Ricky and Lindsay from Placeworks are going to assist us with taking those 5 questions.
Hi, Rebecca. Good evening again. I'm going to go ahead and start off with one of the first questions that we got in. What about low-income housing for those making below $45,000? Where would they be supported?
Does anyone from the team want to take that question now?
Rebecca, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think now's the perfect opportunity if folks want to see individuals that would essentially be extremely low income and very low income. If those are the types of units you think we need, now's the time to say it, right? Say it in the chat, say it in your breakout room. So just to give you a sense of what affordable housing is, I know sometimes we throw around all these technical terms, but one individual who is a single household earning about $33,000 is extremely low income. Of 55,000 is very low income, 78,000 is low income. So that's a lot of people, right? There is a lot of people that fall in these categories. And then median is 99,000. So to your point, the question is really, you know, if that's the kind of housing you would like to see, or for some of those units, that's what we're here to hear. Next question, Ricky.
Yes. Okay. Next one reads, would you have the number of what the saturation of affordable, subsidized, and low-income housing in the immediate area?
Can you read the question again? The number
of what the saturation of affordable, subsidized, and low-income housing in the immediate area. So I'm assuming what the number would be in that immediate area of affordable, subsidized, and low-income housing.
And that would probably be existing, right? So they're wondering how much affordable housing is there now.
Oh, okay.
Saturation.
I would, is somebody from, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is Jessie from VTA. I'm assuming we'll need to do a little bit of market-based research to be able to answer that, unless anybody else on the team is equipped with that answer. We may have to get back to you.
I don't have that answer either.
And you know what, I'll make a note of that question and see if we can get you the answer before this is over.
Sounds good.
Next question.
Okay, next question reads, well, when will we begin planning and construction of electrified Caltrain?
I can take that, Rebecca. We understand that Caltrain, that electrification will come along with high-speed rail. And so that is likely to be 2028 or 2029 when that is under construction and coming to Gilroy.
Thank you, Bruce. And it looks like if we can unmute Consuelo from the county's Office of Supportive Housing, it sounds like she has an answer for us of how much affordable housing exists in Gilroy.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, everybody. I will type into the chat a map of the affordable and supportive housing that we're aware of in South County. And it's an interactive map, and you have the option of selecting the city, the supervisorial district, and it includes like how many ELI units there are. And if there are follow-up questions, perhaps Rebecca, for the next meeting, we can provide actual, information from a numbers perspective.
Sounds great. Thank you, Consuelo. Next question, Ricky.
Okay, moving on. Will you be adhering to the development standards in the general plan and the Gilroy downtown specific plan regarding building heights allowed?
VTA Placeworks.
So I can start with that. There is an existing downtown specific plan that has standards. This particular site is within the, I think, the historic district of the specific plan. I think that there could be some consideration of potentially exceeding those standards in a couple of ways. And one is the state allows a density bonus. So the state for affordable and supportive housing. So there could be an exceeding of the height in that case. And there's other streamlining efforts that are that have recently been passed into law. So there are potentials for exceeding the height limit. The existing height limit, I believe, is 4 stories or 5 stories. I'll have to look at that, but I think the important thing tonight is to hear from the community what you would like to see in terms of the types of heights that would be appropriate at this site, given the goals of the project. So I think we'd like to hear more from you all, and that could help inform the decision-making about things like height and intensity on the site.
And Bruce, there is a comment in the chat from Council Member Hilton. He's noting the fact that there are not currently objective design standards, which I know is a requirement of some state legislation. So just wanted to highlight that if you want to discuss that a little bit for the community.
So recent legislation, it does require communities to develop objective design standards, and this is in order to ensure that development that moves forward in key locations like transit-oriented locations would be able to move forward without having to go through extensive, lengthy review processes. So this is a statewide initiative to try to solve the housing crisis. And so it's encouraging cities and jurisdictions like Gilroy to create objective standards that then housing developments could come in, and using those standards, if they followed those standards, they would be approved in a streamlined fashion. So that's the goal of objective standards. And thank you for bringing that up, Council Member.
Thank you. And I think we'll take one more question to stick to our close to 10-minute limit.
Perfect. Sounds good, Rebecca. Okay, one more. Have all other locations for TOD, transit-oriented development, been looked at and eliminated?
I can jump in and speak to that. So countywide, VTA has 25 sites, and that is a number that actually grows over time. So every time there's a capital project such as BART or BART Phase 2, or right now we're in the process of extending our light rail line to East Ridge in East San Jose. Every time we wrap a capital build project, like the examples I just gave, there's construction staging area that automatically converts into future TOD sites. If you are actively following our program, we have negotiations ongoing for roughly 6 sites at the time right now. We also have roughly 6 that are in our pipeline. This is one of those 6. Ultimately, portfolio-wide, we have the opportunity to build out 7,000 housing units throughout our county. We're anticipating that 2,500 units of those at a minimum will be affordable housing. We have capacity for commercial build out of 3 to 6 million over the course of our portfolio in the county. And so we're not skipping over sites, but what we are doing is identifying sites in the near term that we think are ready and prime for moving forward. And as I mentioned when I was presenting earlier, we have a partner who is able to fund affordable housing at this site. And so along with the visioning concept that we're going to be looking at tonight and the coming community engagement, we're looking at what is feasible in the near term for TOD at this site. And we know for sure that affordable housing is feasible in the near term.
Thank you, Jesse. Okay, everyone, I'm noticing so many great comments and questions in the chat. I want you to know that we're tracking all of them. Now it's going to be your time to head out into the breakout room where you're going to have 40 minutes of airspace all to yourself with a facilitator. This is your time to talk and to really talk about what you would like this land to do for our community. So remember, Bruce talked about, do you want to see retail, gathering spaces, green spaces, public art? We know that there's going to be residential and some of it will be affordable and workforce housing. And it sounds like folks are saying they need extremely low income housing, but whatever it is, this is now your time. Each group has a facilitator who will introduce themselves. Once you are there in the breakout room, please note that if your questions are not answered for any reason, the note takers are to get your name and your contact information so that we can get you an answer eventually. One more quick note before you go into the breakout rooms, you're going to have to hit the accept button in order to enter the breakout room. So with that said, we will return after the breakout room and I'll be asking each group to report out 2 or 3 of the top themes or concepts.
Sophisticated use of Zoom, joining breakout rooms.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Cliff, go ahead. 40 minutes. See you in 40 minutes, everyone.
Together outside. I think the idea of mixed retail makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're looking for a liquor store on that part of town, you're okay. If you're looking for a grocery store, you're going to have to travel for a ways. And so I think we ought to be thinking about the complex itself, but more broadly in terms of the community and what serves. So I think there's so many ways to make it an appealing and engaging space that helps create community. But I would prioritize that.
Okay. Thanks. And Diana?
Is there like a childcare center there, or is there a need for that in Gilroy? No? Okay, I'm seeing it.
Does anyone have comments about that they'd like to share?
That we did have a few childcare centers closed, but that's so dependent upon the economy. During the pandemic, obviously, with people being at home, they're not using daycare. But if the economy heats up and then there are more, families where 2 parents are working, then they'll probably need it again. But Gavilan's childcare center closed a few years ago because it wasn't filling.
How many units remind me, how many units are we talking about in phase 1?
Jessica, are you able to answer that?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. I think we're looking somewhere between 100 to 150. That's generally the most that you can kind of, do at one time. And so I think that's the current consideration at this point.
I've got a question.
Sure, Jen.
So, I heard in the presentation a lot of talk about this being family housing, and I think, I remember this from, I was on the Housing Advisory Committee for years before it turned into something else, but it was, the Gilroy has very few places where adults who are not single adults or childless couples can live until they become seniors. And in our homeless population, this is reflected, people have to age into housing because if you're a single in your 40s and 50s, low income, there isn't any place for you. And I think we need to make sure we've got the small units to serve singles here. That yes, families with children is an important market, but the single adults market is big and it's not being served.
Great. And Carolyn, did you have anything to add?
I agree with Jan there. I think that's a need here. And it's also those young singles and things like that are the ones that are going to go out and enjoy the restaurants and do that kind of thing. So I think that would help the downtown. But I agree with those that have said park spaces, plazas, things, green space is real important.
Right.
Having been fortunate to travel to Europe quite a bit and see some of those older neighborhoods and things, but there's a lot of benches and places for people to do the passeggiata, as they say in Italy.
Put some of those chess tables, you know.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
those outdoor chess tables. That would be
yes,
fun.
yes, that kind of thing. So that would be my input there.
Great. We do have a couple more questions, but I do want to let you know I am going to ask one of you to share back some of the key components from our discussion back to the larger group and just to summarize 90 seconds or so. So start thinking about that if you would like to volunteer to share back some of the highlights from our discussion. I'll move on to the next set of questions. And this is a little bit different format. This is just a teaser to get us starting to think about access. So if you're able to access the chat, if you could just type in, how do you typically, if you use the Gilroy station, how do you typically get there? VTA bus, Caltrain, Monterey Salinas Transit, San Benito County Transit, Greyhound, some sort of shuttle, carpool or van pool, or other. And you can let us know what that is. All right, so in the chat, I'm seeing walk, car, taxis as well, VTA, Caltrain, San Benito Transit. Great. And then one more teaser question. This is a similar question. Can you also let us know if you walk or bike? I think this is just missing. So it'd be interesting to know if we have any walkers or bikers in Gilroy.
Logan, I'm not sure I understand the question. Does that mean once we're at the station, what are we using the station for?
You know, I think it's actually a repeat question, and it's just meant to get us to start thinking about accessibility generally, to tee up this next question. So, you know, I'd ask us to start thinking about or discussing, you know, what challenges there are that you face in accessing the station, if any, and you know, what might this development do to make the station more accessible? So I know we've mentioned parking availability is a consideration. Are there any others in terms of making access to the station more? Jan, did you have something?
No, I'd say that I think our, at least, you know, especially if you live in downtown or east side, the station's really easy to use and get to. It's hassle-free, and there's always been a lot of parking, which is obviously going to change, but it's always been really easy to get there, pick people up there. You know, the biggest problem with the station is we just don't have enough Caltrain service. You know, if you're going north, you've got to leave really early in the morning, and then you only have one option to come back. So that's the problem.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt there though, because if you live in the northwest part of Gilroy, you cannot very easily get to the train station.
No.
Yeah. So there are lots of, Gilroy has expanded much more to the west because we're not allowed to go east of 101. So everything's gone west, and the farther west you go, the more difficult that is. So you do have to take a car to get there for those who are, anywhere in the west and going north to work.
And even driving, it's not great because there isn't really a good east-west artery there. Once 10th Street crosses over the park, it will be.
Got it. And Carolyn, did you have something to add?
Not really, because I was just going to say, being retired and never having worked out of Gilroy at all, never really had opportunity to use it at all. So so I can't contribute to this part.
Okay, sure.
Okay, that's it.
Diana, I see you have your hand raised. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I agree with Jan. There aren't enough Caltrain stops throughout the day. I mean, it only leaves early in the morning and it comes back late at night. Like after 6, I think is when it starts arriving there. And so I'm hoping that with the future phases, we'll see a lot more trains coming by. And also the community buses don't have a really high frequency, so it's also really hard to get around to other parts of Gilroy because of that. The 68 has pretty great frequency, but again, to be competitive for the type of financing needed for this type of housing, if it's going to be all affordable, we need higher frequency.
Got it. So I'm hearing a lot about the level of service.
Yep, it's an issue.
And then I do want to move on to this final question or group of questions, and also to give anybody an opportunity to speak if you had something you wanted to share that maybe didn't quite fit exactly in the context of any of the questions that we've asked. But if you had comments generally that you'd like to share at this time and expertise you'd like us to have. And it looks like we have a new member. David, did you have something to say?
Hi, yeah, sorry I joined in late. My main hopes, sorry, I have my 1-year-old right here. My main things that I'd like to see from this development is I'd like to see a high density of development because this is the urban core of Gilroy. I'd like to see a high level of mixed use. And I would like to see it improve, not take away from the walkability of downtown. And I would definitely like to see, I guess I just want to make sure, I would definitely like to see that this is an urban development and not more of the suburban type density like the Alexander Station, which I don't think was a great development for a lot of reasons that I won't get into. But yeah, I just like to make sure that this increases the density, increases the walkability of downtown. I'm a downtown resident and property owner. So I guess that's the main thing. I just really like to see this improve downtown.
Great, thanks so much, David. Are there any other comments related to density and character? Carolyn, I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to share something?
Yes, I had one question. Somebody asked what the first phase numbers might be. What are we looking at possibility for the completion of the whole site as far as units of housing possible?
I can answer that, Carolyn.
Okay.
I don't think we know.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of, I think it's, I think we're only looking at the first phase, which Bruce identified kind of between 8th and 9th. The rest of it is at this point unknown. So in the short run, it will be parking, right? And I think this is really, and I know that he mentioned that the downtown specific plan might be underway at some point, with high-speed rail plans coming online. I think VTA wants to reserve the opportunity to have a longer discussion with all of those people at the table so that the second phase is really integrated well with the future transit. So I don't think there's a plan yet for that second phase, if that answers the question.
Thank you very much. That brought me to my biggest question that I was going to have for the night, because I was feeling like this was a little too soon, needing these plans in place. Yes, City of Gilroy is working on they haven't even started the new downtown specific plan process yet. That's supposed to happen in the next couple of years. The development standards for the city are being worked on as we speak and might not be ready till summer. And then, of course, we've got the big guy in the room, the high-speed rail, waiting to see, even if they're going to go downtown, but it sounds like they were planning on it. So, but with all those different things not quite in place, it seems like it's kind of hard to plan something, you know, to make sure it's going to fit with everything else. Let's put it that way. That's it.
Okay. And now it's just about time for us to start to think about how we're going to condense and summarize our discussion today in a few brief points. And again, Jessica has been taking diligent notes, and we've recorded everything that's been said here. So all your concerns and ideas have been heard, and we'll compile those with other discussion groups into a synthesis of community feedback for this visioning session. So I think it might be helpful if folks could type into the chat box things that they think are maybe the 2 or 3, you know, main takeaways or most important points that we discussed today in this session. And it looks like Mayor Blankley has volunteered to recap.
Logan, sorry, I'm seeking clarity. The most important things we discussed or that we see as our priority?
That you think, as a representation of our discussion today collectively, as this group of 16 people, what are the 2 or 3 things that we want to be brought back to the group? Okay, so I'm seeing match housing provided with housing needs. I'm seeing parking is the big problem. I'm seeing take into account Gilroy's lower incomes and the needs for housing for single adults. I'm seeing parking again for transit riders. And I'm seeing we need to be able to count on good frequency of service for TOD to be effective. I'm seeing meeting RENA deficits, and that's regional housing needs allocation. And I'm seeing green spaces, adequate parking, and buildings that fit into the current design of downtown. I'm seeing affordable for people who making wages from the city of Gilroy, not the county. More studios. I assume that means studio size apartments.
Okay, awesome. So just to start off, this is just gonna be a small group discussion. We want to hear your ideas and get your feedback, because you guys are the most important people. We want to make sure that we're designing something that's going to fit your needs. So first of all, of course, as always, just treat everyone with kindness and respect and consideration. If you want to talk, we're going to have a lot of questions, give you a lot of great opportunities to ask questions. And if you want to talk, you're going to raise your hand, and there's some introduction there on the screen of how to do that. And I will just ask you, I'll say XYZ, this person, yes, unmute yourself, and you can share your thought or idea. And of course, as always, no one wants to be part of any kind of demeaning, discriminatory, harassing behavior and speech. So we're just going to try to adhere to these this code of conduct. So to get started here, I would love for everyone to give an introduction to themselves. So let me see here. Can everyone unmute themselves? I think they can in a small breakout room. So I'm going to ask everyone to go one by one and just say maybe your name. And I know that we did a big introduction in the main meeting room about what your role is or how you identify, but if you just want to repeat that so we kind of know who we're talking to. So I'm just going to start calling off names by how I see them. So Carol, Mark, to go first?
Yes, I am a resident of Gilroy and I'm a Gilroy City Council person.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here. All right, next, Sarah Kelly.
Hi, I'm a Gilroy resident, and I also go to the Gilroy Growing Smarter part of the nonprofit group in Gilroy, and I've lived in Gilroy for 35 years. Hi, Carol.
Okay, next we're going to have David D.
Hi, I live in San Jose and I've lived here all my life and cycled all over the valley, and very interested in public transportation to Gilroy, Morgan Hill, South Valley, all of Central California, and curious to know what are the options for best development in Gilroy for Gilroy.
Okay, thank you. Next, John Niles.
Hello, everybody. I'm John. I'm from way out of town. I'm a researcher at San Jose State, and here, as much as anything else, to see how the process goes. I don't really have a dog in the hunt, but I'll be listening. I may leave early and have a good event.
Okay, thank you. Craig Tamburini.
Hi, I'm with the City of Gilroy Planning Department, and I initially was going to be tasked with being a subject matter expert and pulled into meetings as needed, but I'm happy to participate in this one. Mainly I'll be listening, and if there's a local planning related question, I'll be happy to provide information with respect to that.
Great, thank you. Okay, Tom Fisher.
Hi, I'm Tom Fisher. I'm the chairman of the Gilroy Planning Commission and a longtime Gilroy resident.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here. Ingrid Granado. Sorry if I'm saying everyone's name wrong. I probably
No, you did a great job, actually. I'm with Destination Home, but I was actually born and raised in South County in South San Jose, and longtime resident. So so I'm also interested in that process, and I'm very much here to listen to what the community is wanting. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here. Karen Garner.
Good evening. I'm Karen Garner. I'm the Community Development Director with the City of Gilroy.
Okay, great. Awesome. Candace Van, I cannot see the rest of your last name.
Van Sambeck.
Okay.
I'm a Gilroy resident and I work with the Gilroy Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, great. And then I see an F paste on the screen.
Hi, my name is Francesca Pace. I grew up in Gilroy. I live in South San Jose, and I operate the Gilroy Compassion Center for Homeless.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for being here. Carlo.
Yeah, hi, this is Carlos Herrado with Midpen Housing Corporation. I work out of our Watsonville Development Office, and I just wanted to call in and listen in mostly to see what people are saying about this, and to get a sense of what the general feeling is about this project.
Okay, thank you. Rick.
Yeah, hi, Rick Lasalvis with SV at Home. We advocate for housing in Santa Clara County. So similar to some of my other colleagues, I'm here to kind of listen in and see what the residents think about the project.
Okay, great. And last but certainly not least, Ann Calnan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Calnan. I am the VTA Environmental Programs Manager. However, tonight I am participating as a Gilroy resident.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And we just got a new person. Hello there, Jack. We're just doing some small group introductions. Do you want to introduce yourself, say your name and maybe what your kind of interest in the project is, or who you are in relation to why you're here tonight?
Oh, I'm a Gilroy resident of, 40 years. Live near the downtown area and just interested in what this project is all about.
Okay, well, welcome. Awesome. Well, we're just going to wrap up small group discussions. And as you've all met each other now, keep in mind that for the next couple 40 or so minutes, we're going to be talking about everyone's ideas. And at the end of this, we're going to do a quick report back to the larger group about the 2 to 3 big ideas that we really discussed in this group. So I'm going to ask one of you to volunteer to be that report back person. So it'll just be a short 2 minutes max of kind of telling the larger group what we talked about. So keep in mind if that could be you. Okay. So this is a context map. We can come back to this at any time during the presentation if we need to refer to it. And so to start off, I'm just going to ask people to raise their hand and I'll call on them to answer these questions, but just kind of think about it. What do you think of the site and this opportunity? Does anyone have any initial thoughts?
So this is Jack. The first thing that comes to mind is, okay, where do all the people who live and visit this new site park?
Okay, right. I'm hearing a lot about parking that seemed to be big in the chat. That makes sense. Okay. Does anyone else have to contribute to start off here?
Well, this is Anne. Let me answer your questions here. I think the site is fabulous. I like the area because it's downtown and there's a lot of things, there's a lot of potential for downtown and a lot of things happening with high-speed rail coming eventually and so on. What are some of the things you would like to see improved? Walkability, just the area in general being improved. Downtown is a little bit bleak in my opinion compared to other places I've lived. Not only does it need the housing, but it also needs the retail, which I've spoke about before at other public venues. So those are the things that are kind of important to me personally.
Okay, thank you so much, Anne. That was a great summation. Yeah, if anyone feels like they want to answer a question, I see Candace here. Go for it, Candace.
I don't have a question, or excuse me, I do have a question now. I don't have an answer. What I'm wondering is this going to be a mixed use project? Will there be commercial at the bottom and residential at top, or, you know, and really how high will this go? I understand that right now there's maybe a limit, but they didn't actually say how high it will go.
Right. I think that someone, maybe Jesse, you might know a little bit more than me about that part.
Sure. Hi, Candace. How are you?
Good, Jesse.
So one of the things I didn't say when I introduced myself as a VTA employee is that I lived in Gilroy for many, many years, starting when I was 10 months old. My children go to school here, and so I'm very familiar with the community. Candace, your question about mixed use, all of our TOD is aimed at a mixed use product. And the reason being is our biggest goal at TOD is to drive ridership. And to do that, we really need a mix of uses that encourage ridership and connectivity along our lines. And so I think not only do we have a housing opportunity, I think we have a commercial opportunity. I think we also could foresee placemaking opportunities, community serving opportunities. And so we're really here to listen and see if you guys have ideas that can help us form where this heads.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Carol, hi, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, I was under the impression that we were going to get our questions answered, because the question about the parking is a very real issue. And I too am wondering, not only where would the guests park, but I'm wondering, what about all the VTA and Caltrain riders? Where would they park when they've lost, when they lose all of their parking spaces? So when would we know the answer to that?
Lindsay, I can attempt to answer that if you'd like me to try, and others can join in.
I think that'd be great. Just off the top, I think we want to just definitely communicate that this is the starting point for this project, and that we really want to get your opinion on where they should go and what you would like to see, and make sure that it's, your needs are met. So if you don't want parking taken away, that's what this we're meant to talk about that right now. So there's no answer totally yet because the plans are still being made right now. And Jesse probably has some more concrete answer for you.
Sure, I just wanted to provide a little bit of context. Carol, if you've been following some of the high-speed rail environmental clearance process here at the Gilroy station, you might be aware that high-speed rail is planning to replace the vast majority of Caltrain's parking, which is on our property. So 500 plus parking spaces are going to be relocated on the eastern side of the future high-speed rail station. There are 78 stalls that are associated with our site in the long term. And those 78 stalls, as an agency, we're committed to replacing and making sure that we're keeping on site. That might take form in something like shared spaces. So at some of our TOD sites in other communities, we have parking for housing and mixed use opportunities. And then there's also during the day when people go to work that transit parkers utilize space. So I just wanted to highlight the context that at full build out, high-speed rail will be doing the vast majority of the replacement parking associated with this site. We also care about access to transit parking and otherwise. The new residents and people who will be coming to the site will also be parking at the location, and we obviously will follow city code on parking requirements for our own program, whatever that ends up being, and that will also house residential, commercial, and guest parking.
Now I'm even more anxious because your project's going to start in 2024. High-speed rail is not even thinking of starting until 2029, if it even gets going with the depth that they're in. If high-speed rail falls apart, we won't have a parking lot for VTA and Caltrain because nothing will be developed in that east parking lot. And realistically speaking, you're going to be putting all those cars on the roadway because why would the people take Caltrain or VTA if they have no place to park?
I'll just note that we are planning on phasing development. So one of the first things that we're talking about tonight is an affordable housing component that might take up in the neighborhood of 2 acres. Our site is 10 acres. So I think you could anticipate that there would be a phased parking program on our site. So much of the parking that exists today would stay as we phase out the project over time. And if high-speed rails build out is not there, we'd be looking at analyzing how we do replacement parking at the site over time on our own property.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well, we've gotten conversation started off with a bang here. I think we're all open to discuss. So let's move on to some more specific topics about developing the site. So there was a lot of talk in the chat in the main meeting room about the potential for housing being developed on the site. And we kind of want feedback on whether you guys would like the idea of putting housing on the site, if there are other uses you think would be good for the site, such as childcare or shopping, or anything kind of like even public or community spaces, if those would be things you'd be interested in on the site. Do you have any thoughts?
I'll start, and again, I hate to be chatty, but housing, excellent, it's needed. I'm curious if it's mixed housing, or is it all affordable, or is it kind of like what was mentioned earlier, a percentage is affordable and then the rest is market rate. Other kind of uses, the commercial, the restaurants and so on, the shops, whatever would be great. A plaza or something, a community space would be awesome. I think that was mentioned as well earlier in the presentation. So all those are excellent ideas. I like all of them.
Great. And just to answer your first question there about the levels of income for or potential for affordable housing, they're looking at doing a mix of income. So it wouldn't just be like all extremely low income. They would ideally like it to be all affordable, I do believe, but it will be a varied mix, or maybe Jesse's shaking her head. I could be wrong.
Sure. So one of the things we're trying to elicit feedback tonight is, yes, VTA does have a policy for creating affordable housing at all of our housing sites, but that doesn't mean we only do affordable housing at our TOD sites. And not only do we focus on mixed use, we focus on mixed income. And so if we are hearing in the community that people are interested in mixed income, we would also look for opportunities to provide market rate housing at this location as well.
I like all your ideas, Anne. Thanks.
Can I
yeah. Carol has her hand up. Is it okay if we just let her go in turn here? Carol, you want to speak first?
Oh, all right. I was holding back because I wanted other people to have a chance to talk. The Downtown Business Association has an idea of putting the plaza, in that area. And so maybe it'd be really nice if ETA could get together with them and talk about what their plans and blend the two together. One of the main concerns I have is the height of the building. Do you have any idea how tall it's going to be?
We don't have any specific plans. So if you have feedback on heights that you would like, it would be useful to hear.
Okay, because I know when our city is doing their objective designs, one of the suggestions was to not be more than 1 story higher than the existing buildings already there, so it doesn't stick out like Alexander Station does. And I know I've gotten some feedback from some of the downtown people saying they don't want a donut hole. Do you know what I mean by that? A donut hole? Where, have the buildings where police and fire can see in, people can walk and also view what's going on inside, but no center activity with the building complex built all the way around where there's no visual from the outside. So more like little pods, of buildings with maybe streets or whatever, where it's more open for the people and not just one massive apartment building.
Do we know how tall the high-speed rail parking garage is going to be?
Oh, who are you asking? Oh,
anybody that can answer it.
Oh, okay.
Jesse.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, Jesse, I'm kind of curious because that's going to be I would anticipate that's going to be a fairly significant structure, the parking garage across.
I know I know it's going to be a significant structure, Anne, because there's, I think, north of 1,000 parking spaces going to be in that parking structure. I don't know the height of it, and I don't believe they have designed it to that level yet either.
Okay, Ingrid, please unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm also juggling a 2-year-old at this point. But I wanted to mention one thing. Maybe I was a little bit unclear as well before I entered the breakout room, but I'm kind of understanding from what we're saying is that this is a time, and maybe it would be helpful to clarify. I think people think they're going to get answers during this time, or that we have already some plans. And I'm understanding that we don't. This is really a time for them. You just want to know what the community wants, right? Like, this is what you want, this is what you don't want. And maybe because I'm hearing them asking a lot of questions. So I just wanted to give my input on that. My other input was that I have also a 8-year-old, so it's a lot of noise, I'm sorry. My other input was in reference to the architecture. I've seen some really cool architectural designs where the buildings or the layers are like staggered in a way, and then they like use like an outdoor area to, there's ways in which you can hide instead of it looking like just one big block, which I think everyone hates is one big block. I think that's my opinion, because even when I see how, like, there was a time period in the South Side and in Morgan Hill where houses were built and it looked like a box, literally, with like a little side box as to enter, and they're ugly. Nobody likes nobody liked them. A lot of people like actually like, they would do all sorts of stuff because they actually have a lot of yard. But I would recommend staying away from that. And I just think I've seen really beautiful architecture like that, where you can incorporate, Gilroy is very historic as well. And I know when I worked in East San Jose, it was really, really important to make sure that the architecture of the buildings that were in East San Jose, like that the more modern buildings, at least the facade on the outside had that. So I just wanted to mention, I've seen beautiful things in it. And I think, like, especially with Gilroy's like landscape and hills, it'll be really beautiful ways to incorporate that.
Okay, great. Thank you. You're so right. This is really a time very perceptive that we want to be getting your ideas and your feedback. I know everyone has a lot of questions. Jesse's doing her best to answer them with the plans that are in place so far. But of course, I mean, the architecture, that's a great example of the type of feedback that we're looking for tonight. So thank you so much. Does anyone else have any ideas before we move on to the next kind of topic of discussion?
Yeah, I have one more question. This is Jack.
Okay, Jack.
If there's to be housing on this site, is there a way to give priority or limit the occupancy to people who actually need the close proximity to transit for their livelihood?
That's a really interesting idea. I don't know the answer to that question, but we can definitely put that down as an idea. I know that they sometimes can prioritize things in terms of if people are residents already or something like that, but it's difficult when you also don't want to discriminate necessarily, that you can get into some like legal issues with that. So that's a really interesting idea, though. We'll definitely put that down. Sarah? Hi.
Hi there. I would like what I envision is continuing, since the site is in the historical district, that it be blended with that. I think, and also on the height wise, like we were saying, not any bigger than the what's in the area would be great. And I was under the impression that the whole reason this came up with the VTA, well, one, they have land, and two, that they want to develop it for affordable. So I would be more pressing into developing something what is our greatest need. Like, who are the people out there that are going to need housing that we as a community, as Gilroy, cannot give to them right now? Glen Loma is beautiful, but the people we're talking about won't be moving into those houses over there unless you can get 5 families to move in there, right? And again, it's for people, and I'm thinking too, people that are unemployed. To me, it's a mixture of the very low income, because I think there's not enough of that in our community. And I think with the creativity, it can be made in a way that also people, like you said, a square or open space. So it's not, the residents can use it, but it's also, they're inclusive into the whole area. Kind of like, some of the things we already kind of have. And as far as the retail, I would be more of just keeping it more housing, because we have our downtown area, and that would help maybe boost, maybe getting people, to invest or to open a shop or to hire people. So that's my idea. And then with the parking, I don't know if they can limit how many people move in. I heard it at Alexander Station. If there's 2 people in there in one apartment, you can only have 2 cars. You can't have 4 cars. So stuff like that. But yeah, I think we'll just have to work with that and see what we can do. But like you said, if there are people that are close to mass transit, like you said, they won't have to have a car and stuff. So that's basically where I'm coming from, because there's going to be things in the future coming up, this, rent and people maybe not being able to stay in their apartment. Might be nice to have a transit place where they could go for a while. And then once they get a job, they would move out and they would move into some other place in Gilroy. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. A lot of great ideas there. Okay, we only have 15 minutes left, everybody. The time is flying. We're all having so much fun, I know. So we're gonna move on to the next section here. So here are some photos that were also in the presentation in the main meeting room about some ideas about different types of housing. I know some of you have talked about this, like the idea for affordable housing with this example at Alexander Station. And some gathering space ideas in open park, some fun little food things. In green space. So moving along here, I'm going to ask everyone to respond in the chat whether if anyone does travel to Gilroy Station, how do you typically get there usually? And you can say that you don't travel to the Gilroy Station either. That's also a fine answer. Okay, great. I'm seeing subscribe. Okay, and take bus 69 or car. With no traveling. A train. Caltrain. All right, and this is, I'm assuming, in a world in which we do not have post-COVID, a post-COVID era, or how you traveled prior to COVID. Okay, great. We have some variety here. Thanks, everybody. We're going to go to the next question. We have a second question here. Oh, do we? Yeah. Okay. The next question is, what modes of travel? Okay. I feel like these are the same. If not, you can answer again. It seems like driving. Oh, what modes of travel do you use at Gilroy Station once you get there? So if you have a different answer than your first answer, you can put that in the chat. Okay, all righty. So hopping along to the next section here, we have a couple more questions for you guys about transit that we can discuss aloud. What challenges do you face in accessing the Gilroy Station, if any, and what can future developers do to make it easier to fix those issues of access that you face right now? Anyone have ideas here? Hi, Sarah, go for it.
Hi, we love it during the giant season because we get up early, and so I would say keep the amount of spaces as people riding on the Caltrain. So that might be, or maybe provide another off-site parking or something for overflow. So that's what we really enjoy, and it's very convenient and it's easy, and the ride is just lovely. So that's what I would suggest. Make sure there's enough parking.
Okay. Parking is duly noted. Lola is taking notes furiously here. I see Candace has her hand raised. Do you want to, you go for it, Candace.
When my husband did have to travel to work, because he doesn't do that anymore, he actually would drive to the San Martin station because it was quicker.
Ah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a hack. Interesting. And that's just the travel time between stations, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? We have more questions if not.
Oh, I was gonna, if I could add, yeah, I don't know how they could do it, but if they could let you know maybe that there's some spaces available at San Martin, then when people would get there and if the lot's full, they could say, well, on the sign, this is open, this is open. So it gives people an opportunity to, you know, drive and park their car somewhere.
Okay, that's a great idea. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're gonna hop along now to our last topic for discussion. And I want to remind everyone that we still need to think about who's going to report back to the larger group. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about kind of the vision for the future here. Does anyone have any kind of words they want to use to describe what you would want this development and land to achieve for the community? I've heard things about providing for what people are lacking right now in Gilroy, especially in terms of housing, it sounds like. So any other ideas for that? And then for what you hope the development would bring? Okay, I see Carol. Go for it, Carol.
High quality. I want this, I feel everyone deserves to live in a very nicely built building, something that you could be proud to call home. I want it to be something that we could admire and be proud to have in our city. So high standards. I would like to see it maintained and always, you know, have a really good property management company making sure that it was painted and always landscaped and kept up and clean.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I know we haven't really touched upon any opportunities for, I mean, I'm not really hearing people voicing their desire for like a lot of open space and public art within the project, connections via bike or anything like that. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that anyone wants to really make sure that is included? Okay.
That would be great. No, that the artwork, open space, bicycles, no, that would be wonderful to add.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Candace, go for it.
Well, I guess if there is, I mean, obviously art is always going to be a great thing. It's just for space. I think you guys are going to have to worry about the parking first, because I know that most people that live here in Gilroy or have lived here in Gilroy know that apartments, they give you one space, you need three. You know, they give you 1.23 spaces, you need more than that. So if you know, parking has got to be first, and then if you have room for open space, bonus.
Okay. Great, thank you. Parking is definitely key, it sounds like. Okay. And I see some great comments from Craig and Jack in the chat. Thank you guys for providing, especially Jack, for that resource. We can definitely use that as a idea, as a guide for what similar development here could look like. So as we are wrapping up right now, does anyone else have anything last they want to add before we nominate our reports back person? Does anyone feel like they're capable? So I need to pick.
Right.
This feels like middle school all over again. I feel like you guys all did a really great job at speaking. I would say either Sarah or Carol, would you, either of you want to report back to the larger group?
Sarah, go ahead, go for it.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Okay.
All right, thank
I'll
you.
report back.
Okay, great. So I think if there's any last things anyone wants to make sure that Sarah reports back on, I heard a lot about parking, making sure that there's enough and that it's not, you aren't left high and dry with the change and transition and to light rail and all the projects to come in the coming years. Improved walkability and a mixed use or mixed range of housing with retail and then kind of a spruce up in the area. Just considering that it is downtown, having respect for the area in terms of preserving the historic component within the nearby area. And then concerns about building heights and just adherence with that as well. And yeah, that's what I heard. Anything else?
Good architectural design, a good property manager that always will maintain the property.
Okay, and then also in the chat here, I'm seeing there's some great ideas about having a green roof or a rooftop open space. Good property management, there's agreement on that. And connections to other transit providers out of the area. Great comment. Yeah, okay.
Well, what was the one after green roofs?
Connections to, let me see here. Good property management, I think was one.
Mm-hmm.
Connections to other transit providers. And Anne said, tying it to the right revitalization of the downtown. Great reminder. Thank you, Anne.
Okay.
Okay, and Jack, I'm seeing you're saying that high-speed rail parking on the east side of the tracks should show in your overview maps. Okay, let me see here. Well, Jack, I cannot, or it looks like you're unmuted. Are you talking about this map, Jack?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and is it over kind of where my mouse is, or on, I'm sorry, yes.
Wherever it is they're planning on putting that parking, if you're going to, you know, your map implies that you're going to take away the current parking. It'd be nice to know that there's a plan for replacement parking. That doesn't show on your current diagrams. Also, Carol mentioned the offset in construction dates. As your project progresses and starts to eat up the more than the 35% capacity that supposedly isn't being used, there needs to be commensurate parking somewhere else, and that would be the other side of the tracks. So even if HSR doesn't happen, if it's later than your project, something needs to be done over there to bridge the gap.
Correct. I agree, Jack.
Thank you, Jack. Yes, of course. And I think Jesse knows a little more specifically about where the parking is kind of, it's all conceptual right now, but where the parking would be located. Jesse, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. High-speed rail shows kind of programmatic level where they plan to have parking. And so just on the eastern side of the tracks, there's going to be a plaza and drop-off station in the middle, and then there's going to be parking on either side. And then just further south on Alexander Street, Alexander Station Street, there's a significantly higher number of parking that's going to be provided in a parking structure.
You had another diagram that had the conceptual high-speed rail station superimposed on it.
Yeah, I think the breakout visual is not the same as what was shared. Yeah, but good point, Jack.
Okay, everyone. Well, we're going to go back to the main meeting room. It's been so lovely getting to know you all and all of the things that you want to have on this site, what your vision is for the future. And can't wait to hear from Sarah on in the larger group. Thank you guys so much for hanging out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay.
Get this breakout room recording. So thank you for joining us tonight. It's great to have you here and have such great turnout. Just want to double check you can see my screen, the breakout room discussion screen. Yep.
I can see it.
Okay, great. Just a quick little overview on breakout room etiquette that Rebecca covered earlier. Let's please treat all participants with kindness, respect, and consideration. When you have something that you'd like to share, please raise your hand either physically or you can use the Zoom bar down below. hit the reactions and then click raise your hand. And please mute your audio when you're not speaking. VTA will not tolerate demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior or speech. VTA staff will remove participants who refuse to adhere to this code. So let's all be good neighbors and keep this productive tonight. And so just to take a look at the overview map one more time. Oh, actually, I see a couple of hands already.
Yeah, you know what? They only have 40 minutes, so let's just dive in and hear what they have to say.
And I think it would be helpful just so we can all see each other. Just take unless there's a specific slide, just take it off so we can all see each other.
Yeah.
Oh, can you not? Well, yeah, I have questions to be sharing with everybody that'll help us move through the discussion. So you are able to, where you can see, I think you can see yourself. If you can click over to gallery view and see a few more people than just yourself. That's one way to see a few more faces. I will get right to, we've got 3 hands here. Let's start first, and then we'll move to these questions.
Just a point of order in the future. If some of us are deaf and need captioning or someone to tell us what you're saying, will that be provided in the future? Because I know you have the slides, but as people are speaking, if I can't hear, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I understand the debate. That's something that we don't have provisions for this evening, but if you let us know in advance of a future workshop, we can make provisions for that.
Yeah, captioning would be great.
Okay.
Captioning would be wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. First 3 hands that I saw up. We can start with Todd. Why don't you go ahead and...
All right, I win. Thank you. Do you want me to address your questions or ask the one I wanted to ask to begin with?
Ask your question first.
Awesome. Very intrigued by the parking situation. I think I'm one of the 7% that said they drive their cars and park there. So I am concerned about handling the future load of parking. Pleased to see that it's only a percentage of the parking lot, but I didn't get any numbers like how many actual parking spaces will there be when it's done or when it's in construction.
I don't have specific answers for that. Does anyone on the call?
I would just say that's definitely an anticipated question as a Gilroy resident, and it's my understanding. I think we need to get a firm answer on this one, but High Speed Rail is doing some replacement parking. We still need to chat with them to determine how much that is, but that is a conversation that's taking place. So we will definitely note your comment.
Okay, that's good to hear, but that would be very far into the future, I'm sure, when they actually do build parking. Right. So
Todd, can I ask you, maybe I'll spin that back to you. How much parking would you like to see remain available there?
I love the stat. 63% of the spaces are being currently used, at least pre-COVID. I would assume with electrification, that's going to go above that. And people are going, be more trains and people take them more. With the development of Gilroy and the growth of Gilroy, I just want to know that we're not going to run out of spaces. We won't have a deficit to start with, and we have plans to keep up with it. I'm a fan of mass transit. I'm a fan of affordable housing. I don't think that affordable housing should impact people actually taking mass transit when it comes to either the long-range VTA buses or Caltrain, and I am concerned that it will.
Okay, great, thank you. And just as a note, I'm taking everybody's names down as I see a hand pop up. So I will get to you in order. And if anybody else has questions, please put your hand up. Canyon, can you like to chime in?
Hey, sure. I am a huge proponent of advocating for truth and history. And I am also a designated MLD in regards to NAGPRA and CEQA, California Environmental Qualities Act, and Native American Graves and Repatriation Act. That being said, Native communities are always the last to be considered. All of the decisions, all of the permits, even the EIR is put into place. And then at the very last, it says, have you considered the cultural and historical resources of the territory? And then what is going to happen in the mitigation process? I'm wondering, have you reached out or are taking strategic steps to involve Indigenous peoples in regards to the impact, both biological, environmental, and cultural resources and how they're going to be impacted, but also this being a space around with the VTA, you have a large audience. And so many times as an Indigenous advocate for truth and history, we are believed to not exist. And that's on America's pattern of history. But us in community to be responsible, taking strategic steps to, be advocates. So is there intentions around community art? Is there any art projects, mural, plaques, or efforts around California native plants? When bringing in opportunities for Indigenous peoples to offer consultation, and also possible ways to interface with the public. Because there have been some places like in Davis where California native plants have been brought back in the garden. And there's plaques where it says the Indigenous language. In Miwok territory, they have a Indigenous botanical survey of the plants of the area, but they highlighted Indigenous perspectives first. There have been murals that have either hired Indigenous peoples or consulted with Native peoples around depictions or how Indigenous peoples are spoken about. And then, of course, Indigenous patterns and basketry, beautiful art, highlight that Indigenous peoples are still here and we can celebrate the history of the land. So wondering on the EIR element, consultation with Native peoples around cultural resources and community education for thinking community art project, community arts stuffs.
Yeah, great. Anyone from the team want to respond?
I would just say that this is just the very beginning process, and I'm so thrilled that you're here tonight, Canyon. I think these are wonderful ideas, and I just want to remind folks that questions is definitely part of it, but the other part is you just saying this is what we would like to see here, right? We would like to see some representation of Indigenous, whether it's in public art or space or whatever that may be. So it's noted, but just remember this is the very beginning of the conversation. So this is all great info. Keep going.
And I just wanted, just as I was starting to unmute myself, I was doing it from the wrong spot, and then my picture moved, and I may have unmuted somebody else by mistake. Everything that we're gathering tonight, so is to learn about what the community would like to see, and that Canyon, everything you said was so perfect and beautiful. Because this is what we would put into an RFP when we go out to the developer community, if we go out to the developer community. Right now, we are exploring developing a site. We don't have a project yet. This is if we're going to go forward with it, and we likely will. This is everything. We go out to the developers and we're like, okay, developer, we've already done a lot of homework. This is what we want to see when you come to us with your RFPs. There we go. This is what we want to see in your proposals. How are you going to do this? And we've already gone out to the community, and these are all the ideas that they've shared. How are you going to incorporate this in your development? So keep them coming. Thank you.
Great. Let's see. Swanee, you're up next.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Once again, I don't get to Gilroy too often, so I looked up on Google Maps the location we're talking about. I see the parking lot there, and across the tracks to the east, that seems to be a large undeveloped parcel. There doesn't appear to be buildings on it or anything. Has has anyone looked at that property for a possible housing development that could actually be a bit larger, and then perhaps just have an under the track walkway to get to the Gilroy station and board the train there?
I can respond if you'd like.
Thank you.
This is Janet Smithheimer, and I'm representing VTA. So that whole area that you're mentioning is where the California High-Speed Rail owns the land and will be building eventually a station, some parking areas, some parking garages, and that whole plan is currently published as an EIR draft that is available for public review, which we'd be happy to forward the link to you about. So
okay, I have a follow-up question then.
Okay.
If high-speed rail, if and when it ever gets here, are building a station for their high-speed rail trains, why don't they have any housing plans in their construction options for the station? That would make sense to have housing right there at the station, instead of losing a parking lot across the street.
Yeah, I think there's a three-part answer to that really quickly. They're not really focused on housing. Their mission is to build the high-speed rail, and if you follow it at all in the news, it's been hard enough for them to even get that going, and it has a very long timeline. So if you think about it that way, and you think about the housing crisis and the VTA goals, which are more shorter term, in the sense that we can move forward now, that's what we're trying to do. And so, eventually on the other side of the tracks, they're on the high-speed rail land. I don't think there's any reason there can't be more housing. I just don't think they're really focused on that idea right now. The other aspect of it is, and I know that the messaging that you heard earlier tonight was maybe a little confusing. What we're trying to talk about with respect to parking on the VTA land is that we are going to try to replace as much parking in whatever we sponsor the building of that is possible, and hopefully as much as is needed that's taken away on our side. So don't think we're losing parking. Think about it that we're trying to figure out tonight and ongoing how much parking we can build into whatever the vision that you all come up with shows. And so there are plenty of examples around the Bay Area of housing projects and commercial projects that have parking for both transit riders and the people in the buildings. And so that's what we're aiming for.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation. I would certainly want to see in future documents a promise of creating additional parking somehow by the VTA to be part of the contract. But I thank you for your explanation.
Sure.
Good night.
Thank you, Swanee. And just a note, Lupe, I see your hand. I've got you marked down. Rebecca, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. So in terms of answering these questions, I see this site as an opportunity for Gilroy to rectify what it's long neglected, and that is housing for extremely low income and low income folks. We see lots of our Gilroy residents unhoused, and it's a desperate situation. Especially during this time of the year where the weather is dangerous and deadly. And so I see this as such an opportunity. Swanee, could you go on mute, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just remind anybody who's not speaking to please mute themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just see this as such a great opportunity. We are really far behind in terms of the housing that we need for our community. And so I love that that VTA is coming in and using this site. There's a lot that can be done there. There's a lot of land. There's a lot of opportunity for it to be improved and made beautiful and provide good quality housing at the same time. I like the area. It's a historic area. We have the Aztec calendar mural nearby. So I think what Canyon mentioned about some Ohlone art and something to honor and recognize, the former the stewards of the land would be beautiful and just fit in really well there. And I'd like to make sure that we get, that it is quality, that there's quality building materials used, that there is rent stabilization so that the rents aren't raised immediately or within the year, and that folks who are avoiding homelessness by moving into these units are then on the verge of homelessness again. So there's a lot that I'd like to see, but those are my priorities. Thank you, and thanks for this opportunity.
Great, yeah, thank you. Tim, would you like to speak next?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much. And thanks for putting this on. This is a fantastic opportunity, and I'm very grateful. I really think this is a great place for an affordable housing unit for extremely low income people. I work with a homeless services agency, and we've got a homeless epidemic in Gilroy, which I think this would, while it wouldn't solve the problem, it would greatly decrease the people who may be going into homelessness, of which I think there are quite a few, given the rent moratorium that's going to be ending in July. I think there's going to be a lot more people in the streets, and this is something that we desperately need. I think it could be the biggest asset and the biggest push to improve everything in the city for everybody in the city. Also, I like the idea that it is right next to a transit center, gives people an opportunity to get to work without the need for parking and without the need to add more cars on the freeway. I like that it's in the center of the city. There might be an opportunity for people to just walk down the street and shop and also work. I think it's centrally located. And I agree with Rebecca. I think, I would like to see, it look really nice, have quality materials. And to Canyon's point, I would love to see, a representation of the ancestors whose land this was to begin with. And I think there's a really good opportunity to showcase art and culture of this fabulous city. So I'm very encouraged, and I would love to see this happen for the extremely low income housing units. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lupe, you're up. I'll unmute you. Please go ahead.
There you go. I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Thanks.
Okay. I just wanted to point out a few things. I too am really interested in what's happening there. I did a study for a private developer back in the late 90s and early part of the century of this century. And we found various things that were obstacles, and I'm sure that you're all going to find those also. But one of the things that I like about this area is that it is close to transit, and there is an opportunity to, leave your car behind and not have to use it. And I think that the idea about some real affordable housing, but a mixed use affordable housing, is what I'm looking for. I live 2 blocks from the area, the train station, and that whole area is my stomping ground. Born and raised just 2 blocks away from that, and still continue to live here. So I'd like to see something that has a mix, not just low income or just affordable, when you talk about affordable housing. And the reason for that is, if you look around, there's a lot of Section 8 housing. We're going to saturate that whole area. And I think that that's a mistake when we look at something and go, oh, well, we can put it right here, because we don't have anybody objecting to it. And I don't think that that's a point. I want to see this really taken into consideration that not only the architecture of it, because I know that somebody brought up if it would adhere to the certain specific plans that we have, but also to the type of housing that we'll have. Also the type of parking. When you say you're going to replace parking, I'd like to see the type of parking that isn't going to be out front in the street. Another thing that I want to point out is that we do have the affordable housing on 10th and Alexander. And I will say that I am very disappointed in that project. So I would like this new project or a VTA project not to mirror that project. I'm there almost every other day, either by it or going to the store close by it. And I've talked to several residents. And although one of the things that was said when it was being built, oh, they can take the transit, so we don't have to put so many parking spaces in. Well, if anybody goes there in the evening, they will see that the people that live there have parking all the way around, and in the evening are using the parking lot for the stores across the way. So there is a parking problem or a problem with getting them to take transit. And I know we're in COVID, but still. Anyway, so I'd like that to be taken into consideration when you do this, because I know that we do cut parking when we think they can take transit, but if they don't take transit, we're then just in a parking problem. The other thing that I just like to see when we do this is to adhere to the type of sound barrier that's going to be needed there. Living 2 blocks away from the train station, I hear the train station, and I have double pane windows and everything else that I can do. So I think that you have to really look at that when you're building next to the train station. But I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see it go forward, but in the right way. So I really appreciate these meetings. Oh, one more thing. I'd like to thank Rebecca Armenderos for putting this on her Facebook, or else I would have never known about this.
There you go, Rebecca. Shout out. Thank you, Lupe.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a qualifying question really quick too? When you said you didn't want it to mirror the other housing, so it was about the parking. I was curious if it was about architecture as well, or anything else.
It was about architecture as well. Don't get me wrong.
Okay. It helps us know.
No, I am for smart for smart growth, and having been on the city council and talking to several people even in the 90s and coming forward. And I will tell you that I know that when we put in our growth boundary, we have to look at going higher. So I am not opposed to it going up another floor or whatever, because we have to look at those kinds of mitigations when we're planning things now. However, when talking to the people that live there, and I would say I have 10 of the apartment people that live in the apartments there, they're having problems with parking. There's a problem with the way the hallways are made and how the apartments are facing each other or face out. Even though they face in, they said that there is a little bit of privacy, but not very much, and they're running into each other. So it doesn't work the way that they did it. So we need to look at that and not mirror it architecturally or parking wise.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Rose, do you have something you'd like to say?
Hi, yes, thank you
There.
for calling on me.
Lupe, please mute.
Me
just hear a
mute?
little static. No, I thank you. Yeah, just heard some static in the background. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thanks for that. I also like the location. I wonder about any kind of supportive housing, so for people with any kind of disabilities, physical, mental, emotional, and substance abuse and that kind of thing that often are connected with homelessness, whether there's any plans for any of the units to be supportive housing. Also, I forget who made the original comment, but I wonder and this may not be the purview for this or the purview of VTA, but I wonder whether there's any mixed development in the vast development over on Santa Teresa, whether there's any provision for moderate to low to extremely low housing in that enormous development. That's it for me.
Thanks, Rose. Would anybody on the team like to respond?
I can respond briefly to the supportive housing question. This is Janet again. So again, we have a partnership with County Office of Supportive Housing, where we hope to tap into their Measure A money, and we have some commitments to do that. And that does emphasize, in part, mixing some different affordable income levels and includes funding for permanent supportive housing units. So it's really great to hear you lend your support to that concept. So thank you. We do hope that there will be units like that in here.
And I can answer to the Santa Teresa one. When Jesse was speaking earlier about what projects we do have in the pipeline, that is not one in the pipeline currently, but it is one of the 25 sites that we do have available for eventual TOD projects.
All right, thank you. So let's see. We've gone through our list of hands that I had seen up. I think I'll mention two things before we get further. At the end of our discussion, I'm going to pick one of you guys to help out and report back to the main group. So just a warning, you know, if you don't want to do it, that's fine, but that's something that we'll do. We'll get to report a couple of minutes of our discussion back to the main group at the end. And just to move our discussion forward, I'm going to move to the next slide just to see if this sort of stirs any thoughts, and feel free to chime in. And we've talked about lots of this already. Let's see, but I'll just read some things off and see if it shakes any questions up. What do you think about housing here? What kind of other uses you think would be good on this site? We've talked about different levels of income and affordable housing. Would anybody like to talk about retail or like childcare uses that are of some of the space?
Those are both good suggestions, right? Retail, childcare, services that help the working people of our community, right, who are in need of this housing, and also spaces for micro businesses, right, for very small, just starting businesses, or what's the other name for them? Like, anyway, you know what I mean? Micro, very small businesses that are just starting up, that are of the residents or of the community, right? We don't need to transplant or bring in anybody to gentrify the area, but we do need to provide a space, and artist space. You know, also an artist space. We have some great things happening down at downtown, right near there with the art center and the different the new art space that just opened up on 6th Street. And so I think it would fit in well to also have an art space where people from every different sector of the community can work together and, you know, enjoy art or make art together.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Scott, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was going to comment. Given its proximity to downtown and some of the pictures that you showed, I think were helpful to me to visualize what could be there. Of course, the housing I do believe is important, but I'd love to see certainly a mixed use. You know, if we can get retail or commercial spaces in the downstairs spaces, ultimately, I think it needs to be very inviting to the community as a whole. because it is downtown, and it looks to me, if there's going to be high-speed rail there as well, that makes it a transit center, if you will. That location is also kitty corner to, if the city ever does it, to the Arts Center. Currently, we have the Arts Alliance, and we have Limelight that's in the old Goodwill, is it Goodwill? Salvation Army building. And I think the city hopefully has plans to develop that into a more art and cultural center. But again, that's to draw people downtown to that location. And it would be a shame if what you're planning on doing or considering doing ends up being just housing, and it becomes isolated from really everything else that we hope happens downtown. I'm hoping that the train station will somehow be preserved and incorporated in what you're considering. People have raised issues with parking, and given the other things that you've talked about are happening down there, I would think there were potentially, if you don't plan well, there will be competition for parking. And you'll have spillover from the high-speed rail. You'll have, of course, the residents that are there. If there's retail there, you'll have the retail uses during the day or even during the evening, if they're evening activities. So I just, parking will ultimately be an issue if it's not planned well. That's it.
Great, thank you. Kathleen, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I wanted to say that the idea of these developments is that it is for everybody. It's not just the people that live there. So that, and ideas that have come from other TODs that we have are dog parks, shared gardens, definitely retail. But the idea is to be really an activated space. It's not just for the people who live there or just the people who take transit. It's the idea is that it's a really activated, alive, happening space.
Can I jump in here? I've had my hand raised again. Nobody's called on me.
Sorry, Swanee. I was going to let Anne-Marie. I was going to let Anne-Marie speak first, since she hasn't yet. Do you mind holding for just a sec? Anne-Marie, are you there?
I'm unmuted. Hi.
Hi there. Thanks.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I hope the design would complement the train station and other design elements that are downtown. I also am concerned that a lot of Gilroy residents won't meet the lower threshold to qualify to be to live there. I think it's happened in other developments, at least three of the other developments that have happened. So I am concerned about that. And I've taken Caltrain for about 18 years, and the parking lot gets full. The reason why people don't park on the area where your design phase is things get broken into and stolen. So everyone kind of packs into the one side of the parking lot. And there are times when that parking lot's full and you have to spill over into someplace else. So I am concerned about the parking for the transit riders. So, and that's it for me.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's any large parking lot, that's definitely a concern. I hear that. Swanee, would you like to say something additional?
Yes, I heard child care center mentioned a while ago, and I did some research in trying to understand VTA and where they've tried to utilize other parking lots for these DOTs or TODs or whatever. But what I understood is that Tamian Station, they had a child care center there. And when VTA purchased that for planned development, the child care center went away. And in Gilroy, I think it is really important, if you're going to have low-income housing, especially for single mothers and fathers, that a child care center be on site there at the parking or within the the residential units for these single parent families. And it, again, along with retail and all the artwork and everything, childcare is empowering. It allows single parents to work, and it just makes perfect sense. I just wanted to comment on that.
Yes, I appreciate that. Lupe, you have your hand up. Go ahead and unmute.
Okay. I piggyback on the childcare as to what could be there also, and some retail. But I wanted to ask, when I looked at the map, you have it bordered to the south by 9th Street. 9th Street is currently closed, but it does belong to the city of Gilroy. And it's been used as parking and everything else for a long, long time. Does this mean the city of Gilroy will be opening up West 9th Street? Because currently it doesn't really exist.
That's a good question. Do we
Wait,
have something?
what do you mean it doesn't exist?
Well, if you drive down there, okay, and you go down 9th Street, there's no way to pass over the train tracks and get onto Monterey. The street, what used to be 9th Street, is there because I used to go down 9th Street with my bicycle. But years ago, and we're talking 30, 40 years ago, because of the cannery opening up there and Walkers and all kinds of other packing places, 9th Street kind of went away and became a parking space. Mm-hmm. But I looked it up not too long ago when we were working on the Orchard Supply project, and we noticed that the city of Gilroy owns it, but it isn't open and it isn't really accessible. So I just wondered if the city of Gilroy will be opening it and paving it, and if it will be a street.
I can take a shot at that answer. I'm not aware of any plans to open that up at all.
Okay, because I mean, if I'm showing it and I'm going, okay, this looks good as long as it has those entrances and those, you know, the egress and stuff. And I'm just going, but 9th Street doesn't exist. And it would cost the city money, or there'd have to be some talk about opening 9th Street up, paving it, and making it useful again. But that's just something I wanted to throw out when I was looking at this map.
Okay, great. We are getting to towards the end of our 40 minutes here in the breakout room. Let's see. I was wondering if Rebecca would be interested in being our point person to report back to the main group, and if we can help her out in coming up with two or three main points that we have discussed in our group and we think are important to report back. Anybody can throw things out at this point.
Rebecca A or Rebecca G?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca A. You feel up to the task of saying a few words to the group?
Sure.
Great, thanks. So let's do a quick little summary or regrouping of what we've gone over. Anybody want to throw out some key items that they feel strongly about that we've discussed?
Well, you figured out what I'm all about.
We have 1 minute.
Parking.
1 minute. Parking. Yeah, it seems like parking, retail, childcare. I heard a lot about recently.
That's a great one.
Also reaching out to the Native American community.
Yep. Great. Yes.
That was a big. Okay. Yeah, 36
and,
seconds.
And making sure that housing is affordable. Yeah. So Rebecca, I'll let you just kind of summarize that, and when we get back out, they'll call our group. We're group 5, and
can we come up with a more creative name in 11 seconds?
Any suggestions?
I'm kidding.
Welcome back, everyone. Just give it about 30 more seconds while folks rejoin the large group. While folks are still joining the room, I'll just remind everybody that we're going to do some report outs. I believe we have 5 breakout groups, and I will call on group 1 first, and hopefully you have a speaker ready to go to share the top 2 or 3 ideas, themes, comments that came out of your group.
I think for this, the facilitator for that group should say who is going to speak so that we can unmute that person.
Great. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome back, everyone. So now is the time where we hear a report out from each group. I will ask the facilitator to either report back what the top 2 or 3 themes are, or have somebody from your group introduce themselves. We need to know whoever is speaking so that our tech folks can unmute you. So I will start with group 1.
I actually need to.
I think Bruce not able to right now, but he did say that Patty is the person who will report back from their group.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Patty.
Hi, everybody. So one of the top 3 items, actually we had 4. One of them is ensuring that we have extreme low-income housing available in that location, but also consider having small businesses for entrepreneurs to be able to use their at the location. And extremely important is walking access and parking.
Thank you, Patty. ELI housing available, small business entrepreneurship, walking, and what was the last one? That's okay. It's being recorded. Okay, group number 2. Who would like to speak for group number 2?
And Mayor Blankley was number 2.
Thank you, Mayor. Take it away as soon as they unmute you.
Okay, I hope I do this justice. We had a great discussion in our group. So the points were that the housing be for families and singles, that we have lots of green spaces and gathering spaces, that we focus on housing that meets our regional housing assessment needs deficits, a lot of which is in extremely low income housing, and that we address the parking that may not then be there for those who are using the transit center, because we want services to improve. We want our Caltrain and bus services to improve. I'm on the VTA board too, so we're constantly working on that. But it is something that Gilroy absolutely needs, because it's a kind of a catch-22. We can't ride because we don't have the services. And there are many parts of Gilroy where people do work north and would use public transportation. They would have to drive to public transportation to start, but it doesn't make sense for so many. So we need that improved, parking and the transit improvements. I think I hit all the points there. We also mentioned what not to do with Alexander Station, not a development that has that is built around a center where then that center is hidden from the outside, because things can happen inside there even though it's gated. So not built in that format.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Who would like to speak for small group number 3?
So we have Sarah Kelly from our group.
Hi, I'm Sarah. In group 3, again, we had lots of good discussion. I first would start off, we agree pretty much with everything everybody has said as far as parking and the structure and mixed housing. We would like to add to that to incorporate, since it's in a historical district area, the architecture part of that, to have it all combined or smoothly transition. So when you're driving, it kind of all connects, right? The building height to kind of stay what it is already in that district. Also again, the open areas, some art, yes, green roofs. Maybe that space could be used for that, for green roofs. Let's see. We did talk a lot about parking and like having more parking accessible for both VTA and for the people that are moving in to the new mixed range of housing. Walking, that's pretty much it. Oh, good. Oh, there's a couple things that weren't mentioned yet. Good management, the property management. They should be really good, whoever they hire, to keep it up so it looks good. So people are proud about where they live, and that the quality and where they live, that they're, you know, proud to live there, and that, you know, it just extends the community. So that's it.
Great, all great points. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yeah.
And we will move on to group number 4. Who will be speaking for group 4?
Hi, Rebecca. Mark Turner, he's going to be our spokesperson.
Great, welcome, Mark. Let's unmute Mark Turner.
Okay, thank you. We had a number of comments, some that have already been spoken, but we talked about the fact that there needs to be very low housing units in Gilroy. There was a question about whether or not the development at its current site would be in conflict with high-speed rail. We also talked about the fact that, much like many others have mentioned, the parking problems and challenges that could become a part of that development, a lack of parking for those who are trying to use it for a transportation hub. There was also comments made that this might not be the most ideal location for this development. And then the other question we had was with regards to other developments that VTA is doing, because in the presentation, when you talked about mixed use, and there showed some artist studios and some other types of businesses and that would be attracted to a mixed use development like this. Our question was, what types of businesses are actually attracted to an extremely low and very low income development in a mixed use setting? Do you have examples of what those businesses might look like?
Thank you, Mark. Your question is noted.
Thank you. And again, if I could expand on just a bit, not what you might think could happen, but do you have concrete examples of where this is occurring now and that we could go and take a look?
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, we are going to move on to our last group, number 5.
Right there, yeah. So reporting back for our group is going to be Rebecca Armendariz.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca and Spence. So our group wanted to ensure that the original keepers of the land, the Amamutsan Ohlone people, were acknowledged some way, honored with some artwork, with some, you know, a history plaque, something to acknowledge, right, the original keepers of that land. Also that the land be, or that the housing units be for low and extremely low income, that they provide units for those folks who really need it. And that if there's a loss of parking, that it be recuperated, and that be codified in some way in writing somewhere. You know, there seems to be a mistrust of these kind of developments taking parking from our commuters that need it and our users of public transit, and then it not being replaced. So we'd like for them to see the plans and see where it shows us that the car parking can be recuperated. And then lastly, that the spaces for retail be used for retail, childcare, art, and of course, services that serve the residents of the housing that's being developed, as well as those of the surrounding community. Thank you.
I muted myself. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, so that is the 5 report outs. We are getting ready to come to a close. Thank you all very much for participating. The feedback we heard this evening will be incorporated into the development to the best of VTAs and the County Office of Supportive Housing's ability. We are also meeting again next week in Spanish, led by Jorge Mendoza on the 24th. It'll be the same content that we went over tonight, but in Spanish. Again, that's on the 24th. And really important for this group, we're going to come back to you on April 22nd. So we really appreciate all the electeds and the city staff that sent that message out. We're hoping you'll do that again for us. We're going to come back on the 22nd to share the ideas and concepts that were captured here tonight, not only in the big room, but also in the breakout sessions. I want to acknowledge that not all of your questions were answered, so we're definitely going to work on that as well. The project will not go to the VTA or the county's board until after we've heard your input. The project website is up on the screen, www.vta.org/Gilroy Development. I encourage you to go to the project website to sign up for project updates. Take our survey, surveymonkey.com/r/QS9GC2J. For further comments, you can also reach out directly to VTA at community.outreach@vta.org. And I also just want to take a moment, there was so much great information in the chat, but some of the common themes I heard: housing for people who work in Gilroy is needed. Architecture and aesthetics is very important, regardless of the income level. Can we see examples where this has drawn businesses, small businesses in the past, retail, childcare, art? Our commuters need parking, and we would like that memorialized somehow. Amenities cannot be skimmed on. Mixed income, artwork. We need ELI units. Let's honor our native land. It's important to house our homeless population. We need ELI units for singles. Consuelo did type in the chat the list of all the affordable housing in Gilroy. Hopefully you catch that. All right, I think I will conclude there. I want to thank you all so much for joining us this evening and spending time with us. And remember, we will be back on April 22nd. So I hope you will spend more time with us then. Have a really good evening and stay safe.